Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Well Said Podcast. We're back in the Purple Studio. I've been bouncing around a little bit. So sometimes you'll see me on camera. Sometimes you'll see me doing a virtual. So that'll be like a little up close and personnel. But back in the Purple Studio, I'm really excited about the conversation today because it's about longevity, biohacking, your health, all things that I think everybody should be paying attention to now. I've got someone here I'm excited for you to meet, and I'll let them intro themselves. I'll give you a little, gist of it, but he's a doctor in chiropractic, meditation instructor, breathwork facilitator, strength and conditioning coach. You'll get to meet him in a second. He's one of my friends. And what are we talking about? We're talking about how we actually prioritize correctly when it comes to health and well-being. There's 3 hacks that we talk about in this episode, and they're really not hacks. They're things that you should just be paying attention to and really prioritizing. We'll also talk about how do we train better? How do we optimize? What are things we should add on after we do those 3 hacks to keep it actually doable? Think about what's actually at the core of your health before you start adding on things like supplementation and other work like that. And then what daily habits do we know now that maybe this person, this guest, didn't know before that they wish they could turn back time and dive into a little bit deeper. So I'm very excited for this episode. I know it's going to be good because I've talked about these topics with this person before, just off the cuff, off the mic. So I really hope you enjoy. Let's get into it. All right, we're here. We're in the studio. Welcome, Matt.
Hey, how's it going?
I'm like, oh my God, I always forget you got the doctor in front of your name. I'm like, I got to call you Doctor.
Dr. Matt.
Dr. Matt. Matt Wiest is here on the podcast. Matt and I met at Alter, I think would have been where we originally met, right?
Probably.
Or Center Movement,
maybe 5 years, maybe longer. I don't even know. It's been a minute.
Oh my God. When did I start going there? I think that I started going in college. So mid-college. So we probably know each other like 6 years, maybe.
Probably, yeah.
Long time. We both taught at Alter. And I'm not going to lie, we were so weird about like subbing and different things. So I'd be like, Matt, you're subbing my class. I'm going to sub yours. Because we have a similar teaching vibe. You know what I mean?
For sure. Similar
Everybody's
music.
vibe is awesome. But similar music. That's why. Because people were like, I like the rap. I like the pop, all the things. But Matt, welcome to the Purple Studio.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
I'm hyped that you're here.
Yeah.
Will you give everybody a little bit more of an intro of yourself and who you are? I know I gave you like a little synopsis. But
yeah, for sure. Yeah. So my name is Matt Wiest. I'm a doctor of chiropractic from Alberta, Canada. I played hockey my whole life, which is what brought me down to the States. And I went to college in Wisconsin, met my wife. We have 2 little girls now.
So cute.
Yeah. So we live in the Twin Cities here. I'm a strength and conditioning coach, breathwork facilitator, and kind of just a community builder here in the Twin Cities area. So.
You're very good at creating community for people. And we'll talk about that later, but you're very good at it.
Yeah, I try. I mean, ever since I was little, that's what I've recognized that I thrive in. Like I need people and I need, especially being here and now raising a family. My wife and I are not from this area. So just having a support system is huge.
Yeah.
So
you and I might need to talk because I'm planning on hosting an event March 14th.
Okay.
At Forgotten Star Brewery.
Oh yeah.
And like live pod and like do like an event for it. And we might need to talk about that 100%. After this. I just realized I haven't talked to you about it. I'm excited for this conversation though. The only other thing I was going to ask before, because I didn't write this down, you're a doctor of chiropractic. Mm-hmm. What would you say to somebody who right now is like, oh, I don't believe in chiropractic? Just because I have to poke at it because I go to the chiropractor. And I don't think I've ever been resistant to it. It's like almost like somebody saying like, no, I don't believe in the doctor. I don't believe in the dentist.
I joke around like, it's like, I don't believe in accounting. Like, it's like, but no, I definitely, for some reason, chiropractors, it definitely comes with the territory. Like you're going to hear a lot of people that have strong opinions either way. And honestly, in some cases, rightfully so, like we have such a wide scope of practice, which is amazing. It's so many ways to help people, but there's some wacky stuff out there for sure. So I get it, but think of it as a professional title and not like this is what the service is.
Yes.
I didn't realize this before I got into school, but there's actually over 350 different techniques within our profession.
Oh, wow.
So knowing that, I mean, if somebody comes in and they're like, hey, I've been to the chiropractor before, I usually still run down like, hey, this is how we do things here. Cause 99% sure it's going to be different than their experience.
Probably. Yeah.
So it's very much so dependent on how you're seeing a chiropractor and who you're seeing rather than just the profession kind of as a blanketed, little package.
I think that's a very good answer. I like that answer because you're not like, you got to go to the chiropractor. It's like nothing like that. You're just being open about that.
For sure.
Very interesting though. Well, today I want to talk about longevity, and I feel like you in a way have all the tools at your fingertips of longevity. And even I remember like 6 years ago when we were both teaching at Alter, I remember going to a breathwork class of yours, and I remember going to like a sauna cold tub event or something. And this was before anybody was talking about it. So I feel like what better way to talk about what we're doing in our day-to-day and longevity than with somebody you weren't doing it because it was cool or because someone on TikTok told you, because TikTok wasn't even around yet.
We didn't have that yet.
We didn't have that yet. And I mean, yes, we had social media, but I'm just saying it's not like the Stone Ages, but still. So I'm excited to have this conversation, truly.
Yeah, for sure.
What are people prioritizing incorrectly? Because you and I were texting back and forth about things we wanted to include, and you said master the basics.
Yeah, I feel like a good way to kind of expand on that is we live in a culture that is very micro, and what I mean by that is like just focusing on like the nitty gritty little things that, don't get me wrong, I'm sure there's value there, but we kind of jump to that before we can actually get the macro down. I don't know if you're familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but it's kind of like that. Like we skip over the foundation, like the base, the basics, the things that we need to build off of. And we kind of go right to like, all right, what can we do high level? Not saying that the high level stuff doesn't matter, because it can give you the edge. It can be helpful, but I feel like you're going to get a lot less out of that if you're not solid in your foundation. So I guess if we're applying this to longevity and health, I think of like a little bit of a trigger word, like the biohacking things out there, especially in this culture where there's like, you're being sold something all the time online. Like every time you scroll, it's like another thing that you need, right?
If it's not a paid ad, it's an organic ad.
Exactly.
If it's not an organic ad, it's an influencer. If it's not an influencer, it's someone who's, what is it called? They pay you to do it, or they trade the service.
Yeah,
whatever.
All
anyway.
The things, yeah. So
and don't worry, I do it too, but I only do it with what I believe in. So anyway.
For sure, yeah. And it's all out there. And again, not that that's a bad thing, but there is like, I feel like there is a lot of focus on some of those micro things that give you that little edge. But when most of society is still trying to figure out that base of the pyramid and how can they figure out the basics, when we're only focusing on the top. So like things like, supplementation, we talked a little bit about, or like different like red light therapies or different technologies, like all of these things that have a very good place in longevity and in health and wellness. But when we're not focused on or have our base dialed in, it's almost just like a wasted effort in my opinion. Yeah,
it's more external, and it doesn't like it. Well, first of all, it's not sustainable because it's like just a random thing that you're adding in.
Yeah.
And when you're like, oh, I need to take supplements now, it's like, well, what about all the other things? Like, what about the basics, which is what we'll talk about in a second. But that's what I've been trying to focus on, is like, get my basics right. Since my basics, my base is pretty freaking solid, I'm like, now I can start to add one by one.
Yes.
But right when I found, like, even the past like year or two, my sleep has been a little bit off. I've had to reverse. I'm like, okay, yes, I'm going to take supplements, but I need to get my sleep right again, because it messes everything up.
For sure. Yeah.
And, we talk about hyper fixated on all the external solutions. Like, we really truly need to be paying attention to the basics. And that's life right there.
And it's tough. Like it is tough, especially because again, we live in this society or this culture where instant gratification is kind of like, it's everywhere, right? So we want those quick results. We want the quick fix. We want somebody to tell us like, what is the fastest way to get to XYZ? And I think because of that, there's a lot of distractions. So we miss out on the value that comes from taking care of those basics.
Completely.
And I feel like within that, there's so much room for people to just brew on that and grow within that. But they get pulled out of that so quickly because of all the flashy lights. It's like, oh, well, this is the next thing. This is the new thing. And those might be true for the person that does have that dialed in, but not for everybody.
Yeah. Do you see that when you're, working one-on-one with people, especially when you're doing like mobility work and like chiropractic work? Cause yours is more, I feel like, stems on mobility and pain. What's it called? Like not
management.
Yeah. Pain management. Yeah. Do you see that where people are coming in, they're like, well, yeah, no, I have to do this and I added this. And you're like, well, what are you eating on a day to day or what, like for things like that.
Yeah. And again, like my world is definitely like people who are coming to see me, they have the motivation of they're in pain is usually the reason. And it totally and my perspective on this has shifted. Like when I was just coming out of school, I wanted to have the quick fix tools to give to people, right? As somebody who's in a position to help people with their problems and offer some solutions, I'm like, oh, the pressure was like, I need to give them the solution. I need to have magic hands so I can just crack that back just right.
And you're back.
and you're back. You're good to go.
And you're good. See you later. See you in 2 years.
10 years into it, that does not exist. And anyone who's selling you that, I feel like I would ask questions, because I do think that's just something that is out there that I don't believe exists. And I don't believe that we're going to truly create solutions for people unless we can motivate them intrinsically to find those solutions.
Yeah, I love that.
And I guess to like expand on that a little bit, like I feel like, the days are gone, at least for my personal practice, where I'm just telling somebody to come back in regularly to like manage symptoms
or maintain. They always say, I've heard like, that before.
Let's figure out different ways that things that you can do outside of here to empower you to feel better.
I love that.
I think in healthcare in general, like that should be the option.
Well, it puts the control on the human who's like coming in for discomfort or whatever. Like it's not just like, I have the control, come see me. Yep. Yeah, I'm the way that you move forward, the way that you feel better. It's like, no, we're going to team up and you're going to be in charge of going home and doing some stuff.
Yep.
If you don't want to see me as much.
Well, it's kind of funny because I feel like being with the rise of like alternative practices for healthcare, I think there's a lot of, the Western system, obviously we need it. It's important, but there is a lot of like questioning on it lately. And I think people are kind of like starting to like look for those other solutions, which is amazing. But unfortunately, I think that the providers in that space, in the alternative space, kind of rely on that crutch of like, oh, well, we're offering this like holistic solution. And if you're not actually providing a holistic solution, example, just passively doing something to somebody and telling them to come back for symptom control, essentially that's like a manual Advil. So what's the difference?
Yeah, true.
You're shitting on the Western system for like managing symptoms with pills, with surgeries, with whatever.
Yep.
But at the same time, maybe less risk, but you're kind of doing the same thing if you're not inspiring somebody to find that solution within themselves.
Yeah, true. And they need to team up, otherwise it doesn't work.
Yeah.
That's what we're finding. I feel like you have to find a happy medium.
Yep.
When we're talking about this too, like what are your 3 hacks for just like longer, healthier, generally living better life? Because I feel like you've got 3 hacks for that.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like it kind of comes back to that pyramid again. So like I'm using Maslow's pyramid or hierarchy of needs, but like the base of the pyramid for me and for the people that I'm working with, I feel like is safety is one of them. Safety and just like nervous system management, movement, and then also like being able to like find relationships and community. So within safety, like we could talk about like sleep and different things like that.
Yeah.
And just making sure that your nervous system is in a good space to like manage all the input that's coming in.
So stress management.
Exactly. Yeah. And then for movement, not necessarily, again, not focusing on the micro, like I need this much degree of rotation in this hip versus that hip, but focusing more on like, all right, I'm moving my body. I'm figuring out how I can build capacity around different movements so that I feel confident in doing my daily tasks without pain, and also just like building that strength into your later years.
Yep. And then community was the last one.
Yeah. And community, I really do believe that. And have you heard of like the Blue Zone stuff? Like I honestly, like,
I love reading about that stuff.
Yeah.
Too.
It's wild. And I do think that there's something there. And I feel like we maybe, especially like with the rise of tech, it's so easy to like pull away from that connection with people and having that support system in place. And I think just like being able to build that and grow that with your people that are around you is so important for your mental health, which really just like like spills over into all the other areas of health.
Yeah. I mean, they talk about with blue zones. Who was I talking to about this? I think it was Dr. Jim Lavelle. But he was on the pod and I haven't released it yet. So if you're listening, you're like, who? It's coming out. Don't worry. But he talked about how you need to have a purpose.
Yes.
And having purpose in those blue zones areas where people live the longest and are the healthiest is like one of the key things. Like everyone's like looking at their food and looking at their, you know, how much movement they have, and it's all true. But having a purpose in your later years is, and especially actually starting it now, is what keeps people living the longest. And when we look at technology, it is getting in the way, because now it feels as though it's very easy to retract in, to just be on your phone, to stay in your house, to be like, you know, that secure place. But we have to get a little uncomfortable. And we have to feel like we have a purpose. Like
100%.
Even the simplest of conversation is they've seen like when people, like older people in specifics, like have an animal to take care of.
Oh yeah.
They live like 10 times longer, something crazy. Like I'm making up the 10 times, but I'm just saying they live way longer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. Or even like, I talked to my dad about this. He was a farmer, but you know, like, and I might look at his life and his career as like, man, he had like, it's so different than how I've built my career. And for me, it's like, there's a lot of hustle and bustle that comes with that. And so within that hustle and bustle, there is like room to like doubt your purpose in different ways, because there's, you know, you got the comparison game, you got imposter syndrome.
Oh yeah.
Whereas like my dad, it's like his purpose was like, this is what I'm doing. And it's not like he did the same thing every day, but it was very direct. Like, this is the path that I'm doing today.
Farming, was it?
Yeah. So he was, you know, it's like, you've got this, it's like starts with seeding. I mean, not to make it a metaphor for life, but you like plant the seeds, you plant the seeds, and then you like watch the whole thing happen all year, and then you harvest. And then that is like the purpose. Like you can visibly and physically see, like, this is what, like, the fruit of my loins is what's coming from everything, all the work I put in that whole year.
That's very interesting.
Which is kind of cool to see. So anyway,
I love hearing that. That's cool though. It's a little like analogy for life. And you grew up seeing that when you grew up seeing purpose. And you chose a different route. I'd be curious, because obviously we talked about, okay, so the number one is feeling safe and sleep, stress management, pulling that all in. I'd like to ask you, because you're talking about your life being hustle and bustle. Mine is the same way. How do you manage that? And like, what would you tell somebody how to manage it? Well,
and this has been traditionally, especially the sleep sector of this one, has been like one of my biggest struggles. Is me too. I'm like I like to get up early. I like to get all my stuff done.
You're posting at like 3 a.m. sometimes, and I'm like, Matt, the like, hell are you doing? Yeah, I'm like, go to bed.
Yeah, I also don't like going to bed early, so that leaves a pretty.
Same way.
And it's funny. I don't want to like derail this conversation, but I posted about this recently, but. Have you done the human design stuff, the assessment? So I have a friend that did that with our team, and it was really interesting. It was, you know, another like personality test. You learn about yourself a little bit, and it really, the thing that I took away from that the most is that I operate on a 24-hour battery. So I need to like expend all my energy throughout the day. And then I need to be completely depleted before I feel satisfied.
Oh, interesting.
Whereas a lot of people, they run on a 7-day battery where it's like, oh, I've got this event on Tuesday. I think I'm chill. I'm in tonight. You know?
I don't work like that. I'm definitely with you on the 24-hour battery.
I'm just like, I want to get the things done. And then by the end of the day, I am crushed. Like, I'm toast. Like, don't talk to me past like 7 p.m.
Oh no, hell no. I'll bite you.
Yeah. But that's like, that's how I operate. And for a while there, I mean, because we live in this era right now where I feel like it's almost like the pendulum swinging the other way. It's like, you almost feel shame for like doing too much. Yep. It's like you're grinding too hard or whatever, you know?
And people comment on it too.
Yeah.
Like, slow down, do this. And they care about you. That's why they're saying.
Exactly. They care about you. And I do believe that to be true for a lot of people. And I just, for me personally, I've realized that like the reason that I do things the way that I do is because I need to empty that battery every day. And so it kind of gave me permission to be like, okay, well, like this is how I operate best. I'm just going to roll with that.
Yeah.
But in that, it needs to be more of a priority for the sleep. And that's kind of been my goal for this year. And I've been doing pretty good so far. Could be better, but it's a lot better than last year.
How are you doing it? Because that's one of the things I actually genuinely need to learn, because I'm trying to figure out, okay, how do I get my sleep back on track? Because it's tough.
I think the biggest thing for me, and this is definitely a work in progress, is being, and you know, you don't even necessarily, it's not even just for entrepreneurs, but being somebody who has a career or a job that isn't like a just tight 9 to 5, it takes the structure out of your life in a way that sometimes you can't control. Like you might be answering an email at 7 p.m. after dinner, or you might be going to an event on this day or that day. So I think trying to set better boundaries around that is like the first thing for sure that I'm working on. And I think that that's important because then you're able to like have a little bit more consistency and predictability with your schedule. As far as like just sleep in general, outside of like dedicating more time, I mean, just like things like the things that a lot of people already know is like the technology and things like that before bed is something that you definitely want to be careful with. And I also feel like depending on the person, just setting your environment is huge, with like lighting, space, and all that kind of stuff. If you're somebody who struggles to fall asleep, which is not my problem, my wife will tell you I will fall asleep on a desk.
You're like this.
Yeah, you snap my fingers and I'm asleep. So
you and I have the same, it sounds like the same hustle to sleep issues. And then I felt once I lay down, I'm like, I'm out. Like
I'm done.
I'm done. Yeah, because I'm overly depleted.
Yeah, exactly. The battery, if I did things correctly that day, the battery is pretty empty. And that's like, all right, I'm satisfied.
I'm happy about it.
So
I'm not mad.
maybe that's our goal this year, is just like setting better boundaries around like, all right, well, this is like, I want to spend time at the end of my day with my partner. So in order to do that and also get these things done for work and family time, like I need to make sure I set the boundaries around the time so that I can still prioritize sleep.
Yeah. So it's kind of like structuring your day correctly. That manages stress. Correctly going to sleep, or having like a set time where it's wind down time. It's all things we've heard before, but it's hard when we don't talk about it every single day and we forget to prioritize it.
For sure.
With my space more recently, I've been really wacky about making it like actually perfectly like sublime, like beautiful, quiet. I don't have clutter in my room. Like that's a rule. No clutter. Like zero clutter. I can't have random shit sitting in a pile over in the side of the room. It doesn't work like that. We got new bedding that's like a little bit more, this is going to sound weird, but like chilly. So like, I feel like I have like when I tuck myself in, it's chilled. It's perfect. We only turn on our like side bedroom lamps now. And like our white noise goes on automatically at a certain time. Cause we set like Google to do that. It's pretty easy to do. And it's like the blinds are down. We've both got eye masks now. I'm not quite on the mouth taping train yet. That's an add-on we'll talk about later. But it's made all the difference because now it's like a safe space. Like even my sister was over and she popped up and she was like, "Oh my God, it's so cozy in here." And I'm like, "Yeah, I know. Thanks for noticing."
Right. That was on purpose.
But sleep really truly is what keeps me moving and going. And without it, I'm going to stress myself out. I'm going to feel depleted. And then that's when the aging comes in your body because the high cortisol levels, they're bad for your liver, they're bad for all these things.
Definitely.
So sleep is number one, or excuse me, I should say safety, but sleep and stress.
Yeah, it's kind of part of that. And like the stress, I mean, it all kind of folds in together, but like with the stress management thing, piece of it too, it's like, it's wild to see how much crossover that has in so many other areas of health. Like again, my lane is pain management. If somebody is, I work with, I mean, when I was in school, I thought I was going to be seeing like the guy that got thrown through the boards at the hockey game that needed to come see me for his back. Never see those people. Like maybe one out of like 20. It's usually people that have been like, yeah, I have this weird like back thing or this weird hip thing that just kind of started out of the blue. I don't really know what happened, but they try to put like a label on it. It's like, well, I changed my bed or I did this or that or whatever. And it usually comes down to just their ability to manage stress in some way. Whether it's like new job, different routine, relationship stress, job stress, all these different things, and figuring out different ways to manage that. And also your own perception of your health, which can add or subtract from your stress.
It's funny. We forget that they are all intertwined together. You know what I mean? Because it's true. I mean, I hold stress in my back and my shoulder. So I will literally hold a shoulder up. And then I was stressed about a trip. We went to the airport and I'm like, I literally cannot get on the plane because my anxiety gets bad when I fly. Unless I get my back cracked. So thank God the chiropractor was at the airport because I was like, I'm tweaking out. And he went and he just was like, "Oh my God, you're tight." And, he kind of like rubbed it out, got me cracked a little bit. And I was fine to go on the plane. But awesome. I was like, but it was my bad because did I prioritize my stress and my sleep that week? No, not really. Was I stressed for a long period of time? Yes. Going into a trip.
And it's tough because it kind of like goes hand in hand, right? It's like, all right, well, I'm stressed because of this upcoming thing. Probably like there's obviously life stress too, but then you start like the anticipatory stress of like this thing's coming up. So it's like, well, I need to like manage that before I can get this thing. But it is challenging for sure. And that's where like a lot of different things that you might not think about as far as stress goes come in. That's why, I mean, I know a lot of people feel this, but maybe they don't understand exactly how or why that happens. But like moving your body, sweating, working out, that is a form of self-induced stress on your body that you are then your nervous system is then acclimating to that to be able to manage that level of stress in more capacity. Same with extreme heat and cold. That's why sauna and cold is so valuable for your nervous system, because you are forcing yourself in those situations where you can then have to reacclimate or calibrate your body to match that. And then you have a wider capacity to like bring or withstand that stress that's coming up.
Yeah, which makes it totally feasible. Now you understand why you would add it on once you can figure out the like just environmental stuff that you can control. So we'll dive into that. I like that a lot. But you talked about movement a little bit right there, and just like transitioning into that like number 2. Like how do we train better, and like how do we optimize this like movement piece / pain management really?
Yeah. And that's the age old question for sure. And I live in a space where it's like, again, it's like, there's always like this next quick fix, or it's like, this will help with this, or you need to do this versus that. And I think my goal with my patients and I guess like on my platform, like trying to like educate people and empower them, is I want people just to feel confident in movement and take some of the preconceived expectations out of it. Because I think a lot of people get hung up on certain rules or certain things that come with movement. Our bodies are resilient. Like they are built to withstand stress. They're built to move in a variety of different ways. I think that what people don't realize is that if your body can move in that way, it's not a bad movement to do. It might just be an unprepared movement for you. And that might be where you kind of get this like hesitation. Like a good example would be, I'm sure anyone who's ever worked with a trainer, especially if it's like 5+ years ago, is, knees out when you're squatting, right? And it's funny because I feel like that cue is there for a reason, because there's a lot of people who don't necessarily have the capacity for keeping their knees in. But if you look at certain like strongman competitors or different things, like exactly. There's a lot of people who train in very variety of different forms in different ways. And I think the fear that gets put on people around like moving right is actually more detrimental than just having them move their body freely and then meet themselves where they're at, because we are all different in how we move and where our kind of boundaries are for our own capacity. That's
interesting you say that too, because I've thought about this before, just with training, since we both do strength and conditioning training, really is we think about even the knees over toes is another good example, which we can talk about too. It's like, when I see people, obviously, yes, they need to keep their knees out if your knees are caving, which means you're probably going too heavy on too, like quantity wise, too high of a load. But in reality, I do narrow squats all the time. And I'm like, my knees don't need to be wide.
Your body is built to do that too.
And it's supposed to. And what actually has become more important to me, and I feel like you'll agree on this with me, instead of going the heaviest I could ever go and like really building, and I still go heavy, don't get me wrong, because it's good for bone density and all those things. But it's more about like, what can my body do that out of a variety of things? Like I'm trying to be more well-rounded in what I could do. Like I used to avoid deadlifts because I was afraid for my back to throw out. Well, go lighter and do different forms of them.
Still hinge. There's different ways to do it.
B-stance. I put my leg up the wall. I do like a traditional one. Some days I do a hack squat version, you know, on the hack machine. And it's like just having variety in what I can do. Like knees over toes. I've been practicing that. Walking backwards on a treadmill. Like things I would never have done in my training before.
For sure. And I 100% agree with all that. And I feel like, especially in like, what I call like meathead training, which is definitely like what I grew up with, is God,
we all did.
Yeah, it's very like one dimensional. Like if you think about it, like squat, deadlift, even like lunge, like at least that's unilateral, but it's all in one plane of motion. We don't really train a ton of lateral. We don't really train a ton of rotational.
Lateral being going side to side. Yeah, obviously like, rotational being like, think of a twist motion, or think of like when you come down from like, let's say you're doing an RDL. So you're coming down and twisting versus just coming straight down the shin.
Yep, exactly.
Just so people can.
Yeah, so they can visualize. Picture, so our bodies, if your body, again, just to reiterate, if your body can move in that way, it's not a bad way to move. So it's just, there's a lot of people that might feel like their bodies are unprepared for those types of movements, but we are designed to go lateral. We're designed to rotate. I think a lot of people, there's a lot of, again, this unnecessary fear that's been instilled in people of like rotating their spine too much, or doing like bending over too much, or hunching their backs too much. And I feel like all of those things have kind of gotten just put in this category of bad. And
I agree.
And I get where people are coming from, because based on our daily activities and habits, for a lot of people, those would be unprepared movements to just like jump right into. But what happens is it ends up paralyzing people from even trying, because they're like, to your point, like, I'm nervous to deadlift because I heard somewhere that deadlifting can be bad for my back. Or maybe you had an experience that was where your back flared up and you're like, not going to do that.
Was bad.
Yeah, so. I'm not going to do that for a while. And it's like that. I think just telling people that deadlifting is bad for your back is something that can actually cause more damage than good. Even though there might be some people that deadlifting, shouldn't go into deadlift on day one with 135 pounds.
Well, no, yeah, nobody should.
Yeah, it's like you got to warm up and work into that. But that's where it comes, the language of like finding preparation for any movement versus that's bad. Yeah. So I think it's just a small little tweak in how it's explained, which I'm seeing more and more, and which I'm happy about, because I do think that's a better, more empowering way to like approach movement for people. Yeah.
And I think we hear too is like what you're talking about is like people will lean into like, there's a difference between how do I say this? Like if you go into a lateral lunge, like, so I'm stepping out to the side, I might have a goblet weight, meaning holding it at my chest. That hurts versus that's uncomfortable. If you're saying that hurts, you should stop. If you're saying that's uncomfortable, that's an area you should be working on. And think about it. If you're doing something lateral versus just a regular squat, you're working all these different joints, ligaments, tendons, muscles, like in your body to make yourself stronger. When you're stronger, you live longer. That's proven. So it's just like, that's what you're talking about is like, in the harm of people being like, no, lateral lunges are bad for your hips. It's like, no, I'm
never going to move side to side again.
Yeah, no, that's not good. You don't want to be single. You don't want to have a single skill, and it's not going to help you live longer. I mean, I'm not knocking. If you're moving your body, you're doing a good thing. Yes. But if you want to optimize and you want to like we're talking about, optimize movement and live longer and healthier, think of the way we move our body on a day to day, and like how eventually it's going to get harder and harder, like picking up boxes and doing all these things. Like, for sure. Why is that important to move differently?
And that's where like we're laying the groundwork now in your 40s, 30s, 20s to then be prepared for that. Because it's, science tells us that we will lose muscle mass and our bone density will change as we age. But if we've built the framework and we've built the foundation for a strong, able body, we're going to be ahead of the game. So that's where it just comes down to having the confidence and the knowledge to lean into some of that discomfort. And again, this is not a no pain, no gain situation. If it's painful, back off, talk to somebody, find some help. Completely. But I think we just, as a whole, we get very paralyzed by like, I don't want to do that because I think it's going to hurt, and I don't want to hurt, obviously. So this must equal bad. And I think the language needs to change around that, as there are not bad or good movements. They're just unprepared ones. Yep. I'm not trained or certified in anything to give mental health advice, but with like, if you're seeing somebody for your anxiety or even your depression, like a very common technique that's used in mental health therapy is exposure therapy, right? So if you're scared of flying, there might be like a technique that is like, okay, well, visualize yourself flying, you're landing, you're happy, you're safe. Or it might be like, hey, if you're scared about that intercontinental flight, like let's start with a small flight. Like it's like that exposure therapy to that anxiety. It's very similar with movement in the body. If the thing that is your and it might not even be a conscious thing, but if you're subconsciously or your body is fearing a movement because it's either been told it's bad or unsafe, or you just haven't done it for a while, instead of avoiding it, let's figure out a way that feels approachable so that you can build confidence in that.
I like that a lot.
And come back to that.
Yeah, I like that a ton. It's a good idea. It's a good idea for anything you talked about. With all you're a movement guy. Like all of your posts on social media are about movement and mobility and all of these things. Why is that so important, for one thing? And what besides the one about knees over toes or knees out, what are a few things that you've realized are totally untrue that you hear?
Yeah, I think
kind of two questions in one, but
yeah, I mean, I think, and it's hard because the social media game too. Like part of it is like, all right, I want to build awareness, but I also I want to stay aligned with how I feel. So there are some things that I definitely post where I'm like, all right, this is getting attention. But the messaging, I need to be like more clear because it's really important to me. Mm-hmm. The big thing for me that is frustrating is anytime there's like a claim of like this, if you do this, you will get this result.
Oh, okay.
Because that is not true. There's so many other variables that come into play.
Give an example if you don't mind.
Yeah, an example would be if you have back pain, this exercise will get rid of your back pain.
That's the algorithm though. Like
exactly.
That's the social media algorithm. If you guys aren't unfamiliar with this, like this is what people do on purpose.
Yes.
Because it's like a 3 to 6 second. I got your attention because you're listening now.
And again, I play the game for sure. I know.
Yeah.
I know what works in that way. But at the same time, like. I take pride in explaining either in the caption about like, this is not what reality is. It's so much more complex than just like A plus B equals C. And I don't say that to like make things feel overwhelming because I get that it can be overwhelming when you're dealing with this. It's not just a clear-cut path. Mm-hmm. I think a way to reframe that is there are a lot of other opportunities to find solutions rather than just like this one thing. Mm-hmm. So like if you're frustrated that like, oh my gosh, like that video that I saw online did not help with my back pain.
Yeah.
Or I've been doing this exercise for the last 6 months and I didn't tone my midsection or whatever. Like if you're frustrated because you saw something and there was a promise that was not delivered, I think to flip that, it's more complicated than that, which can be frustrating, but also there's so many other opportunities to make change for yourself. And you just need to find what fits you and what feels like a good match.
Well, also, I mean, if it's related to back pain, that's like totally different. It's like, okay, find the solution, like really look into it, dive into it. But a lot of them are like toning your midsection or like growing your glutes or growing your quads or whatever. And it's like there's 10 other factors like you're talking about, like eating more. Yep. You've got to be like doing recovery days. It's the time between sets. It's the load, meaning the weight. And
genetics.
Exactly. I was going to say genetics. Yeah. What am I forgetting? Also, why?
Yeah.
Why do you want to grow your glutes?
Right.
Because you want them to be bigger or because you want to feel stronger? That's totally different. Because you want to feel good about yourself, that's okay too. Right. But it's like, have a reason and a why. Like I don't go to the gym just to get a bigger butt. Yeah. I go to the gym because I want to feel good. And yeah, ideally I would grow my booty if I eat enough and, do all these things. But it's like, think about the why too while you're looking and taking in all this information. Like, do I really care about this? In 5 years, am I going to want a big ass? I don't know. Yeah. Am I? I don't know. Maybe you are.
Right.
But it's just like, have a reason and a rhyme rather than just like, what's the word? There's a word for it, but just like your looks basically is what
aesthetic.
I'm trying to say. Aesthetic.
Like,
yeah. Why am my words? I'm losing basic
words are going
today.
out the window.
They're like gone or peace.
No, on that same note, like again, not to make it like super sciencey, but like there is science that will say like if you are very hyper fixated on like this one outcome, that the only thing you're looking for is like an aesthetic goal, and you're not getting that goal because somebody or something that you saw promised that is going to create like a stressful environment, which then again, physiologically, it's harder to actually build muscle if you're in this cortisol spike.
Yep.
So your body is even like science will say like that is not good for you.
Yep.
So
that's why it's hard. Well, and I mean, when you were talking about like lifting heavy, you grew up in like the heavy bodybuilder, weightlifter world.
Yeah.
We grew up as females, I think, in like the hit, a little bit of Pilates, a little bit of running. You got to hit, you know what I mean? And so they're meshing, thank God.
Yeah.
But we grew up with all these like fake news situations too. And hit does put you in a state of stress too.
Yep.
But it's good for you if you're doing it in moderation. I talk about this a lot, but it's true. Like I was training hit all the time and it was killing me. Like my stress was crazy. My sleep was brutal.
Yeah.
I bet you if I did my blood work, I would have been like totally deficient in a shit ton of things because there's no way I was eating enough for how much I was burning.
Yeah.
And good luck growing anything then.
For sure.
Like no way.
Yeah. You're just depleted constantly.
So no, that's not the answer, but some hit is good.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Some hit is good. And it's honestly like everything, like even like we'll probably talk about a little bit more later, but like the sauna and cold, I feel like that is such a like it's got a lot of traction and attention lately. I think it's awesome. I use it as a tool. Just like HIIT, it is stress inducing to your system. You can definitely do too much of that.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And it can be too extreme heat or too extreme cold or too much time. There's all these factors that I think, you know, again, you see somebody posting about this thing or doing that. It's like, oh man, I need to do that more. I only do that once a week. It's like, well, not necessarily. Like it depends on your own capacity and how much your threshold can handle.
Oh, I like that.
For that that amount of stress that you're putting into your body. I use an analogy sometimes, and this is completely translate perfectly, but it's kind of like in the Western world, if you're taking medication for something, like there is like a very effective dose for you, and there is such a thing as overdosing and doing too much of that, and that is a bad thing. There's also such a thing as not doing enough of it, and then you're not really seeing any of the benefit or the effect, but there is an effective dose, and it depends on so many factors. It's going to be different for every person.
Yeah, you have to listen to your body, be intuitive, and listen to what you're feeling.
Yeah.
Like I wasn't listening back then.
Yeah.
No way, because I was just listening to the sound around me.
More is better.
More is better. I have to keep doing more.
Yeah.
And I was exhausted.
For sure.
And I was seeing no results. And I was overtraining. That's exactly what was happening, which fell into sleep. And like I talked about all the other things. So I love that analogy that you talked about. Let's talk about community. That's that number 3. That's that pillar number 3.
Yeah.
And you, like I talked about in the beginning of the episode, you're so good at bringing people together. And I like to do that too, but you're like tenfold over what I can do. I'm like, this guy like is community master 101. I've done to so many events that you've like put on and held, and they're so much fun. And it's fun to be exposed to different things and different people. But like, why is this so good for us?
Yeah. I think like, well, on so many levels, but one that comes to mind just based off like how you introed that is like, I think we have gotten to a point where, and I see why, like it's important to respect your boundaries and to like figure out what makes the most sense for you. But at the same time, we've gotten so narrowed into the conversations that we have and the people that we're around, that we don't really have a true feel for what our neighbors are doing or the other viewpoints that people have. And this can get real deep, or we can keep it shallow. Like either or. But like I just feel like there's a lack of compassion because we can't even fathom how somebody else can see the world in such a different way.
Right. And
bringing people together just allows for that cross-pollination in a way that's like, it might not be forced, but it's just enough to be like, oh yeah, okay, yeah. There's that person. They do that, and this is who they are. And I actually had a good conversation with them. I didn't even know that person existed, or I had an idea of who that person was because of something that I heard about them, but they weren't like that at all. I think of it as like so just picture this. This is like my visual.
No,
like,
I'm in.
So we're on top of this hill, right? And I feel like over time, we've just kind of slowly scattered on either sides of the hill. And it's gotten to the point where like, we can't even see who's over there anymore. It's like we can only see the few people that are right beside us, but we can't even see what's over the hill anymore.
Yep.
We need to climb back up a little bit. We don't have to necessarily be like piled into one little circle where we're all doing the same shit all the time.
Yep.
But we need to at least be able to see like where people are coming from so we can hear their perspectives on the world. Leave what's not ours, and it's like, hey, that's you. I don't agree with that. That's fine. But just have the compassion for like that human being is existing in this reality in their way.
I like that a lot.
So,
and I like your analogy too, because it's true. It's like, how am I supposed to see other things or hear other things if my community isn't expanded?
Yeah.
How am I supposed to continue to find something that's different or challenging if I'm not exposing myself to other people?
For sure.
Because it's good for you to get out of your comfort zone. It's good for your brain and the neuroplasticity to have a little bit something different or be put out of your comfort zone. Or unless you're dating, I would say like how frequently are you having like a conversation that's like you don't know the answer. Like you ask a question, you don't know what they're going to say. Like your friends and family. Yeah. It's good for your brain to get uncomfortable a little bit.
Yeah.
And community can be uncomfortable in a good way.
It can be. It totally can be. And obviously like people operate in very different ways. Some people, I think like us, like thrive in that environment. We want to be around people. There's other people who are like, you know what? I don't want to be around people all the time, but I truly believe that everybody needs community in whatever capacity makes sense for them. Whether you're extroverted, introverted, you need people in your life.
I completely agree.
And so I feel like it kind of, as we're talking, I think like the word that comes up again is just like compassion. And I think it's really hard to have compassion for other people and other scenarios if you haven't been exposed to those other viewpoints or those other experiences that people have. And that's kind of where that can all kind of come together, is just in bringing people into the same room so that they can speak their mind, speak their truth. You can hear them, you can take it or leave it, but at least then you know like there's other viewpoints other than the small little narrow window that you have that exists out there.
Oh, so, I love that. I love the way you put that too. That's really like hit home. I'm like, I'm going to remember that. Like, so let's say we've got our base going. We've got we've got community, we've got our stress figured out, we've got our movement going.
Yep.
Now we can kind of tiptoe into the add-ons, right? Yes. Like, and they're add-ons within each section and area. You as a breathwork coach, we need to even talk about this. It's like, what about this is so good for you, and why the heck did you even start caring about it?
Yeah, that's a long story, but it's the short. The shortened version of it. I mean, we can get into a little more, but like as I have evolved as a practitioner working with people, I've realized how little what I actually do manually matters. And I'm not saying that to discredit the craft at all. No, I think there's a lot of value in it, and we learned a skill from like the assessment all the way to the actual application of working with people hands-on, and there's a lot of value there. But again, if you can't figure out or help somebody kind of get to this place where they are able to regulate their nervous system, it's really hard to make any change. So breathwork is, I think, one way that you can really use the steering wheel and you can control it. Breathing is one, it's an autonomic function. We do it all day, every day, whether you think about it or don't think about it, it's happening. And it's really the only autonomic function that you actually have full immediate control over. You can hold your breath, you can slow your breath down, you can speed your breath up. You can't really do that with your blood. I mean, you can, but it's not like this immediate change that you can do, you know, like your blood pressure or like pumping your blood flow, your heart rate, things like that. So that's where breathing, I feel like, has a lot of value, and there's so much interesting new research that surrounds that again, it's not like ages and ages of stuff that supports it, but I also feel like it's going to be one of the newer things, and it is one of the newer things that people are really starting to focus on for stress management, for like mindset control. All the things. I mean, what would you say to somebody who maybe has never done breath work before, and like what breath work do you practice in your own life? When I'm teaching it, it's usually in an event setting. I for a while we did have like a small platform where we were teaching weekly classes and things like that, and it was so fun. It was during COVID, and it was like, all right, let's switch it up, let's do this, and we had a lot of fun with it. Sweet, it was fun. But now it's more like pop-up events or one-on-one with my people. But I would say, like, as far as a style goes, it's definitely a journey, and it's like taking people kind of on this experience where they are getting into some quick fire breathing to stimulate that stress response in the body, only with the intention of being able to navigate back out of it. Right. So you're training your body or your nervous system to pull out of that stressful state. And what we found is that is transferable to a triggering email from a coworker or a road rage incidents on the road. It's like which we got. I have a little bit of that. I'm not going to lie. We all have those. So it's like, if we can figure out how to put ourselves in a controlled environment in a way that we can navigate our stress, then hopefully some of those skills that we're building will translate to these other things that we might not be prepared for, right? Or we don't have as much control over. But then it's like, okay, our nervous system recognizes, oh, here's this spike. Wait a sec, I actually know how to get back out of this. Okay. So that's where I think like a lot of coached breathing can be really beneficial. Again, it's kind of like the second tier, because I do think there's other things that you can do that will help you in that same regard that are, you know, maybe more accessible or maybe more basic. Yeah. But I do think like that is something that you can really start to look into if you're feeling like, all right, what else can I do? How else can I optimize? How often are you doing breath work? For my own practice, I probably do like a session where I'm like dedicating my mental energy to actually sitting down and doing something, probably like 3 to 5 days a week. Oh, wow. Yeah. And it's short, just like either in the car, I like to, for me, I'll sit in my car either before I go into the office or a lot of times when I'm done work and ready to come back and see the family. It's just kind of like a nice separation of like, all right, I'm taking this hat off and now I'm going to put on dad hat.
Yeah.
And I need to like just get into that. Like, all right, I just had like a pretty high stimulation day. I know that there's going to be kids running around when I open that door. Like, I need to try to be on as much as I can. So how can I kind of make that separation? And I feel like doing even if it's like 5 to 10 breaths in the car to like slow things down, it really helps me kind of get geared up for that.
Very doable too. It's like very doable amount. I like that a lot.
So yeah, lots of different information about like how breathwork can be helpful. But I think just like a very simple like take home from that would be figuring out how to slow your exhales down a lot. So just taking in a breath in either through the nose or through the mouth, and then through pursed lips, slowing down your exhales to maybe like a 5 to 7 second count can really be an effective way to kind of pull you out of that like stress response and into like a more even keel parasympathetic state. Okay. So yeah, that's doable. As simple as like, breathing out for 5 seconds. If you actually timed yourself, it's interesting. I think, again, optimal would be like a 5-second cycle of breathing. And if you actually timed yourself, most people are more in that like 3-second zone. Oh, yeah.
On
where
the
it's
exhale
like,
you're talking about.
So it's like kind of like this shallow, rapid breath, which is keeping us kind of in this like stress response all the time. Mm-hmm. So being able to train yourself to slow things down is something that can be really helpful.
I like that. That's easy. It's easy takeaway. I'm like, okay, check. I
can
do that.
I'm sitting in my car. I'm going to take 5 breaths and I'm going to make sure that my exhales are longer than my inhales. Yeah. That's like a quick and dirty, like, let's just try this.
And now you're doing breath work.
Yeah.
Just like that.
Exactly.
Like, and again, it's the second tier, right? We've got our base going. Now we're coming up on the second tier. Mm-hmm. One I wanted to talk about was sauna and cold tub therapy. And like, we don't need to go deep into this, but do you do this? Do you practice this?
For sure. Yeah. I mean, I really enjoy it for a lot of reasons. One of the reasons is it's something, again, it kind of crosses over into the community piece of it. So I find being in a sauna, one of the things I like the most about it is like, usually it's too warm to have your phone. So you are forced in a small area, sometimes with strangers, and you're just like having these conversations.
It is really fun. I'm not gonna lie.
And it's like, I really like it for that reason. Physiologically too. I mean, it's kind of similar to the breath work and working out and all these other things where we're in a state of stress. We're in this super hot environment. Our body temperature is rising, our cortisol is rising, and we're doing it in a controlled way where we're trying to pull ourselves out of that stress response. So it's showing our nervous system like, hey, you're resilient. Like you don't have to live within this tight bubble. Like there is room for like pushing the boundaries in a safe way.
Yep. A little expansion.
Yep. And that's same with cold tub. And I feel like when I was an athlete, like in college, we would hate the cold tub because it was like, but we did it because we thought it was like a recovery tool for like your muscles, right? There's actually not a ton of research that supports that at all. Like as far as like muscle recovery. I mean, there's some that like questionable stuff that I've seen, but for the most part, it's really, in some studies, it actually shows that it slows recovery down because
to jump in the cold.
Yeah, slows like muscle recovery or tissue recovery down. I definitely don't do it for that. I mean, it feels good to do, but really what it's doing is that similar thing. It's like you are in this like, you can't hide. Like if you've been in a cold tub, like you are in it, you are not going anywhere. Your brain is right here, right now.
Oh yeah.
It is forcing you to be present for that little bit. And then what happens is you are hyperventilating. So you're in this stress response and then you slow things down. So people ask like, how long should I be in the cold tub? How long should I be in a cold shower? Really the answer is, well, first of all, as long as you want to, on the short end, not on the long end.
Yeah, don't go crazy.
Yeah, whatever feels good to you is a good spot to start at. Mm-hmm. But I think what I always tell people is however long it takes you to slow your breath down. So that might be 30 seconds, that might be 90 seconds, but it doesn't have to be like, oh man, this is a crazy story. So the Back Pocket Boys.
I was just going to bring this up. That was what I was thinking about when you were saying how long should you be in it.
Yeah, how long should you be? Not half an hour.
Did you do it with them?
I did it. I
didn't realize that.
Declan was dressed as Santa and I was an elf.
Oh my God, you guys are so insane.
We were raising money for like the best Christmas ever stuff.
I was literally thinking about this right now.
I don't know if I told you this part. So I was in there. Well, Luis was like, we were on live, whatever.
Yeah.
And he was like, all right, like these guys are going to stay in here for another 10 minutes. And I was like, are we? Didn't talk about that before. So it went from like a 15-minute to a 25-minute. I think it ended up being 28 minutes. I actually got COVID 2 days after that. And I truly believe it's because my body was like, you're done.
You're done, buddy.
Like
your immune system fell. Instead of like keeping it nice and high and in a good spot, it was too much exposure.
Like too much. It was like my nervous system was like,
oh my God,
it blew the top off. So that is that is an example where it's like, okay, like you don't get like a special gold medal if you stay in the cold tub for 5 minutes.
You might get a cookie or a sticker. You never know.
Yeah. So a general good rule of thumb is if you can calm your breath down after being in that like heightened state, then like that's a good amount of time. That might be 45 seconds.
You never know. Yeah. Just go for what is doable and mindful.
Yeah.
And then it makes it less looming. And the fact that I can do this in my shower and in my control in my home where no one's looking at me.
You can turn the hot water on.
That's what I was saying.
Yeah. Like after you're done.
Like when you're tweaking out and you're like, I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
Like,
and I mean, you'll see stuff online where it's like, no, you need to do 4 minutes for this, or you need to just end on a cold. Like, yeah, again, that might be like third tier stuff if you're like looking for whatever, but like there is a lot of the value just comes in being able to calm yourself out of that stressful environment.
I like the way you worded that too. It feels very doable. Everything we're talking about feels approachable, feels like I can grab it and I can go use it right now.
For sure. Yeah.
I wanted to ask you this because I think a ton of people always allude to the fact that they're too busy for any of these things. I'm talking like basis level of like, I'm too busy for the sleep fix. I'm too busy for movement. I'm too busy for community. And then of course they're attempting add-ons, right? Like they're attempting maybe breathwork or sauna cold tub.
So then there's more.
Or laser treatment on your face. I mean, all of these things for longevity. But what would you say to somebody who's too busy to figure it out?
I would say, well, first of all, I don't love the word busy. That's probably the first thing I would think of. For some reason, it's drilled in my head. Like busy is like, it's such a state of mind rather than like even if somebody asks me like, how are you doing? It's like natural response to be like, it's been busy. I'm busy. Like
it is a natural response.
For some reason, like that's just, it's almost like a badge of honor that we have, you know, but so anyway, my short answer to that is prioritizing it. So like figuring out like, what do you want out of your efforts in the first place? Like, if you're someone who's like, I don't care about longevity, I don't care about this, that, then hey, do you, whatever makes the most sense.
You keep rolling.
Yeah. But if you're like, I want to feel good, I want to live longer, I want to like build this foundation up for like a healthy, strong future, I would just say then ask yourself like, what are you doing right now or how can you prioritize some of these things in a way that feels approachable? It doesn't have to be an all or nothing, kind of like we talked about. There are little things that you can add in. It's so wild. I mean, this might not be related, but it's just like a story that popped up in my head. Like I was working with this coach probably 2 years ago who I did not enjoy, but I did get a really good nugget from this person and what he challenged me to do, because I was super busy, right? I was too busy to do XYZ. My schedule was packed. I didn't have time for anything else. His challenge to me was, you need to, by next week, cut 6 to 8 hours out of your busy workday. And I was like, no, I can't.
A singular day or all the days across the week?
One day, 6 to 8 hours, like blocked from, I couldn't see patients. I couldn't work on my business. I had to just cut that right out.
Okay.
Which is like, that's like almost a full day. Like I was like, I can't do that. That's like, not only is that like not possible because I'm fully booked with my patients, like that's like a fifth of my income that I can't just like give that up.
Yeah.
And he was like, you're going to do it. And he's like, I promise you nothing will change except for you're going to be happier and you're going to be less stressed. I did it. It was terrifying. Somehow I don't know how, nothing changed. Like my bank, there was no change in like how the revenue I was building. I was actually, I felt way more free to like start to like live my own life and like prioritize some of these things a little bit more. And it was terrifying, but I did it and it was massive. So I guess that would be maybe I mean, everyone's in a different situation, but like a challenge would be like, how can you do less? Like do less, take the pressure off a little bit, do a little bit less, and then revisit your busy calendar and see like, does it still feel like you can't add some things in? Wow, I think for a lot of people, it's more, they're just so in it that they can't even like take the zoomed out view of their own life to be like, you know what, like I can add this in or I can't add this in. It's just they're so in the like the minute of like, this is what I'm doing right now. I have to get this done. And then I have to do the next thing and the next thing.
I feel like I've been caught in that loop too, and like caught with a way too packed schedule. And like, honestly, it was just wrongly prioritizing things that didn't need to be that way.
Yep.
And even like sometimes when I'm like, okay, I have 6 to 7, like I know I want to get this one thing done, but I'm just like dilly-dallying sitting there. Like it's like having actually more structure will actually let you relax more.
Oh, yeah.
Because then I don't feel like, no, I don't have to do all these 17 things that just popped in my head during that 6 to 7 p.m. hour.
Yeah.
I have time allotted on like Sunday where it's like random things like paying bills and doing random stuff like that. It's like, I just do them then.
For sure.
So this time right now is actually for me. Like, do I want to just be, do some mindful breathing maybe for 5 minutes? Maybe I just want to sit.
Yeah. Do you want to like make a fun, like something to eat?
Yeah,
like
exactly.
Snack? Like do something that's like literally has no, like, it doesn't even have to be something that's gonna like propel you forward. Like we gotta like do better. We gotta do more. It's like, no, just like do you, like take the time to do you for a little bit. And I think in doing that, in investing more energy in that, the rest will unfold the way you want it to anyways. You're gonna have more clarity and more space to be like, oh yeah, that's what I needed. Or now I can prioritize this. It's so wild. Like making my, so like in that example, like making my time even less available, which was terrifying, actually freed up more time because I set the boundary of like 6 to 8 hours. That was time where I was just like, all right, sometimes I might get a little bit of work done. Sometimes I might go to coffee with a friend or a coworker or something like that. Other times I might just sit in my office and do nothing.
Chill.
Like that was my time. So
changed the way you worked probably too.
Totally changed it. Yeah.
Wow. So that's pretty freaking cool too.
Yeah.
That's a challenge that I'm going to go ahead and take back too. Yeah. Because I need to be better about that. I can't be so available.
Yeah. Own your schedule. Be like, this is my time.
Yeah. I love that a lot. This has been super helpful, by the way. One last question I want to ask you is just like, what are you going to do for your next like longevity goal? Even if it's just like spending more time on the certain X thing, but what's on your horizon right now?
A couple things that for me personally that have fallen to the wayside is
normal. It happens.
Is like I have gotten into like my strength training. I'm enjoying it. We've got a great routine. I have almost gone, so the pendulum has swung so far the other way. Like as far as like cardiovascular conditioning hasn't really happened a ton. So I've never been like a runner. Like that's not like I would never call myself a runner, but I'm going to try to run a little more. I'm going to get the old blood pumping a little bit more. So that's definitely something that I'm trying to prioritize just for myself.
Yeah.
And then we talked about sleep. Like sleep is a huge one for me. And it's, again, not a matter of like, for me, it's not a matter of like figuring out ways to fall asleep, which I know is a struggle for a lot of people. I can fall asleep. I just need to like make more time to sleep. So that's kind of been my goal for the next little bit.
I think I'm on the same wavelength as you. Sleep is my one that I'm really going to work on. And then probably schedule cleanup and just like stress management is my other one. It's getting better, but I wouldn't say it's in the most optimal position I'd ever want it to be in.
Yep.
But it's definitely better. And I'm like, honestly, a crazy amount happier and more positive because of all of those things and lessening my plate. But it's not it can't be always dramatic. Like it's had to lessen in increments
for sure
to make it doable and be like, oh, I'm still getting everything done I wanted and things are okay and I'm still alive and rocking it.
Yeah.
And then like the asking for help. Like for instance, this is a weird random example, but like Jordan's mom wants to do some like side hustle stuff because she transitioned from her other role.
Yep.
And I might have her do my emails for my podcast. They're not that many, but that one singular stressor is like attached to me like a bug. And it's like, it's annoying and it's right there in my ear. And I'm like, I don't like doing it.
Do this. Yeah.
It lingers on me.
Yeah.
The only other one I was going to say was this is really weird, but I finally caught up on all my text messages.
Oh yeah.
I had 400 that I did on the plane. 400. My sister was like, your fingers have to hurt. Cause I was just, and that was a looming of like, I'm not texting people back. Oh my God, they're probably going to hate me. They're going to be mad at me. I don't mean it.
And then you don't open it because you're like, I'll get back to it sometime. And then all of a sudden you have like 50.
Yep. And then you have 400 out of anywhere. I had looming texts for like, I haven't had as down to 0 like I do right now for probably 2 to 3 years.
Wow. Yeah.
And I'm never letting that shit happen again. Because let me tell you what happened. I did that. I fixed my text, fixed it. I slept like a baby that night because I didn't have this looming weird ass stressor.
Sure.
So anyway, those are my like things I'm working on. I'm a spaz anyway.
No, I feel like it's a good point. Like take the shackles off a little bit and sometimes you gotta do some stuff. Sometimes you can just tell yourself like pressure's off, but sometimes you gotta do some stuff to help alleviate the pressure.
Exactly.
I have one more like just funny little, again, if you're somebody listening who's like, I don't even know where to start. I had this professor in school who every quarter he had everybody write down at the start of the quarter their one thing, like the one thing they're going to change in the next 3 months. And it was pretty crazy. I mean, because there's so much pressure to do like 17 things. It's like on the grand scheme of things, if you would have just stuck to that one thing for 3 months and then added another thing 3 months later, like you probably would be further ahead than like starting 17, stopping 17. Let's try 12. Never mind, that didn't work.
Yeah, that's my problem right now.
So it's like just pick 1 or 2 things. Like take the pressure off and just pick 1 or 2 things.
Do you remember what you did?
It was a lot of really funny random things. One time it was like I just ate a ton of broccoli for some reason. That was one of my goals.
You're like, I'm gonna eat a lot of broccoli.
I think the bigger thing was like I just wanted to eat more greens, and I was like, I like broccoli, so I like was eating like 3 servings of broccoli a day. Like just crushing broccoli. But I just kept that. I mean, I don't eat 3 servings of broccoli a day still, but it definitely like helped me get more greens in.
Good for you.
A couple other ones were just like writing, like journaling and stuff, doing a lot more of that, and just like creating more of like a habit around that. And I mean, some of them have come and gone, but it really helped just to kind of be like, oh, I can easily focus on one thing. Like that's easy.
Completely.
Yeah.
You know what's funny about journaling, and then we can obviously wrap, but I was going to say, I always thought journaling had to be like this whole thing of like, dear diary, here's my,
like this curated,
my thing, or here are my feelings and today. And like, and for some people that is what works.
Yeah.
For me, I am not that way. Like, that's just not how my brain works. I'm not going to go right down and be like, today I had a wonderful day. I'm like a jotter, like a bullet points, a goals, things I'm excited about, things I want to work on, things I like, just I'm thankful for.
Yeah.
That's how I journal. I journal like I'm making a to-do list, and it sounds crazy, but that's what makes me feel relieved and makes me feel good and makes me feel like I was mindful and like I revisited my goals again. So they actually are there and matter. So journaling can be made into whatever makes the most sense for you. It doesn't have to be this thing before bed with a lit candle next to your bed and your sleepy time tea, which I love. You're writing about your feelings of that night. That's not how it works for everybody. No. So if you've knocked journaling, retry. I've thought about posting like journal prompts that I like actually write about.
Yep.
I think I might do that. I need to just do it because
we had somebody come in and talk to our team once, and her style of journaling was set a timer for 2 minutes and literally anything that comes to your mind, write it down.
Yeah.
It can make no sense at all. It can be the most important part of your day. It can be anger, and then and she like would have you write it all down, take it out, rip it up, and burn it or throw it away. And I was just like, it was just like almost like you're taking whatever's just looming here and just being like.
That's why I have like this like list of shit in my phone when I'm on the go. When you're in the car and you're like, oh my God, I cannot forget this. Or like, oh shit, I didn't pay this, or I have to do this, whatever. I have this like get to sometime, I think I call it, like list.
Master list.
Yeah, because honestly, none of it is going to kill me if I don't get it done. But ideally, I'd like to get it done at some point.
Yeah.
Like one every 2 days, I get it, get one of them done, but I no longer have to have it sit and stress over my head.
For sure. It's somewhere.
It's somewhere. It lives somewhere. So I don't have to worry about it.
That's huge. Yeah.
I don't know. Those are just my little random shit.
I like it.
Look at me. I'm like, call me doctor. No, I'm kidding.
Dr. Sid.
Doctor. Thank you for being here, Matt. Yeah, this was awesome. This is a really good conversation. I've got shit that I need to take away and like put into my actual life.
Yep.
Where can people find you across all things if they want to come see you, if they want to follow your social media.
My website is www.thecenterofmvmt.com. So that's where they can find me as far as scheduling time with me. It's also linked on social. My Instagram is drmatt_TCOM.
Perfect.
So, yeah.
And I follow Matt, obviously we're friends too, but he's grown on social media so much because of the helpful information that you post about. Like truly, I like look to you as like a mentor almost with like, how did you grow?
Yeah.
Cause I was kind of in a lull for a little bit there. And I'm not as passionate about making social anymore, but I think it's kind of coming back. It's just kind of coming back to scratch,
For sure.
So follow him there. Everybody, for us at Well Said Podcast, go ahead and follow me across all the platforms. If you haven't subscribed on YouTube, please go do it. I say it every episode, but please do. It helps me. It helps all the things. It helps me grow and do more for you. So do that if you can. And if you need advice, I know we didn't do like general speaking advice, but today was full of advice in general. If you ever need advice and you're in the US, you can text me at 612-470-7569. If you're overseas or out of the country anywhere, go ahead to my link in bio and type in my advice box. I'm going to be doing a ton more with advice, a ton more on my Instagram and TikTok and YouTube on advice happy hours, all of the things. So please, if you need something answered, I will get you answered. I promise you that. So thank you again for being here, Matt. I appreciate it.
For sure.
I'm hyped for this one to come out.
Yes.
It's good. It's good. Thanks, crew. Bye-bye.